If you clicked on this video expecting to find a game that is not like anything you played before, please sit back and let me tell you why that is the case here. 13 Sentinels Aegis is a game that first caught my eye and found its place on my backlog with its developer's unique hand-drawn aesthetic. The company, by the name of Ware, is a studio that is well known in the JRPG community for games like Dragon's Crown or their newest title Unicorn Overlord. So when Sony announced that the game would leave their subscription service in a month, I finally felt the pressure from fear of missing out and gave it a go, which resulted in me immediately being hooked by the gameplay. And the gameplay is where the unusual nature of 13 Sentinels already begins, due to it being separated into two completely different parts. First, a combat mode where you fight massive real-time strategy mech battles, and an adventure mode where you play the story of the people piloting those mechs. In the combat mode, before you even get to the action, there's a lot you can choose. For one, there's your squad where you can choose up to 6 characters to engage in battle, with 1 or 4 quote-unquote generations of mechs called Sentinels. The Sentinels are all of one type, depending on their model. One model is specialized in close combat attacks that can push back enemies or deal huge amounts of damage against single targets. The counterpart for that is, who would have thought, a model specialized on ranged attacks that mostly deal huge amounts of aerial damage, with the exception of a railgun that inflicts harm in a straight line. And to complete the trio, the final model is specialized in supporting, which in this game means things like giving your squad mates a temporary shield, disturbing your opponents with an EMP or placing turrets to aid you in battle. Further, all of these abilities and the Sentinel stats like armor or energy can also be upgraded. And if some abilities get upgraded to level 5, you sometimes even get a new, much stronger version of said ability. Even though I really like this part of the progression system overall, I would have liked it much more if instead of having to upgrade each of the 13 Sentinels individually, you would only upgrade each class. Anyway, now that you have upgraded your equipment and battle suits, you might ask yourself, how do I select the right squad members and equipment to be perfectly prepared? And that is actually quite easy. The game tells you the enemy types you are going to face in each battle. But don't worry, this does not result in the gameplay getting bland and feeling like a chore. Instead, by telling you what awaits you in combat, the game avoids frustrating trial and error. And to keep it challenging, it offers additional optional challenges, like for example only using certain characters, or using only 4 instead of 6 characters to fight. Those challenges, if being fulfilled, grant you rewards that also include tokens to reveal so-called mystery files, that include short explanations of various things you come across in the game. Furthermore, the game also includes a stamina system that only allows you to take a character on 2 missions in a row, before they have to recover. But if you follow these rules without using the option to reset it, with each battle a counter goes up and you get more experience. Now, coming to the actual combat, where you, as mentioned before, take part in real-time strategy battles where you defend the so-called terminal from the approaching kaijus. The battles take place on a very simplistic representation of a city where buildings are only implied. But despite this simplicity, the map still supports the dynamic feeling of the real-time strategy gameplay by including a destruction system. In the battle situations themselves, aside from the abilities I already mentioned, your options are actually fairly simple. You can reposition yourself, defend to recharge EP, which is consumed by any move aside from a basic attack, and repair to regain health. And all of this, in my opinion, makes for an amazing battle system. It just ticks a certain box when you destroy a horde of kaijus with a swarm of rockets or punch a huge opponent back to its maker. Further, I felt like the battles are a great contrast to the adventure mode, where the game treats you with the typical Vanillaware hand-drawn aesthetic and you go through each of the 13 characters' stories in an episodic manner. But not linear one after the other, you actually are free to choose who and how to play, to a degree at least. The combination of this freedom with the addition of some borders, like do the next 4 battles before you continue with the story section, gives the game a perfect mix of action and plot without a linear structure. The actual gameplay in the adventure mode is very limited. You walk around the different sceneries and interact with objects and persons, or you can let your character think about them. And besides like 1 or 2 actual riddles, that's about it, which I don't mind as a change of pace from real-time strategy battles. Now before I go over the actual story, in case you haven't played the game yourself, do that and skip to the timestamp shown on the screen right now. So, with that out of the way, the game is mainly set in an alternate version of 1985 Japan, but also jumps through time in steps of 30 years, ranging from the end of World War II in 1945 to the distant future of 2105. The 13 characters that are spread across those timelines are Juro Kurabe, Iori Furizaka and Shu Amiguchi, 3 high school students that experience strange dreams, Ai Sekigahara, a young man suffering from amnesia, Keita Miura and Takatoshi Hijima, 2 young men from the World War II era of Japan, Nenji Ogata, a vandal, and Yuki Takamiya, his female counterpart, Natsuno Minami, a member of the track team that is fascinated by anything around aliens, Tomi Kisaragi and Megumi Yakushiji, two girls that are originally from 2025, and last but not least the final two members from 2065, Ryoko Shinonome, a girl not in the best health, and Renya Goto, the leader of the Sentinel pilots. Because of the freedom in the story sections, there's no ultimate starting point for the story. But the game pretty much begins with Kurabe, Fuyusaka and Amiguchi suffering from weird nightmares, where they or their older selves fight in a war against kaijus. Kurabe notices that the three are being observed by the school nurse Morimura. After investigating further, he comes across some information about a strong medication the nurse is distributing to a few students. On top of that, he notices that his medical record is saved under the name Juro Izumi, which only grows his confusion. At the same time, the track team member Minami finds a box that turns out to be a robot called BJ, that is tasked with searching a sentinel and assumes him to be some sort of alien. Also, Takamiya is blackmailed by a member of an organization called SIU to observe some students of the Sakura High School. And Yakushiji, who's in love with Juro Izumi, is approached by a talking cat that promises her to bring back her loved one if she shoots certain people with a quote-unquote magic gun. Further, it is revealed that Goto and Shinonome are part of the SIU themselves, when they recruit Kisaragi from a timeline that is under attack by the kaijus. Following that, we learn about Sekigahara's origin, who wakes up next to a seemingly deceased Morimura. Sekigahara, who doesn't remember anything, begins to panic, and as soon as he notices SIU agents approaching, he takes off in fear of being suspected as a murderer. In the 1945 timeline, Miura's little sister Chihiro gets kidnapped by Goto, which leads to Miura traveling to the 1985 timeline by accident while using a sentinel. Now, as the individual stories go on, the game reveals that the world the characters inhabit is not real. Instead, it's a network of simulated environments created aboard a spaceship that was sent from Earth after the environment was irreversibly damaged, leading society to collapse. But the simulation finds itself in danger due to a malfunction in the ship's automated factory system, causing it to produce the kaijus that attack the colonies instead of maintaining the ship's functionality. Also, the Sentinels and many aspects of the simulation are controlled by advanced AIs, including the key AI Universal Control, which manages the simulation's loops. As time goes on, the pilots get to know that their memories have been erased or altered to ensure they continue fighting. Further, certain characters like Juro or Yuri learn that their personalities and memories were transplanted from other time loops. The more the protagonists uncover about the truth behind the world, they band together to stop the corrupt systems and ensure the survival of humanity aboard the spaceship. In the actual final part of the game, the pilots successfully fend off the last wave of kaiju and reset the simulation, ensuring a peaceful continuation of humanity's journey. The 13 pilots awaken from their cryogenic pods, realizing they are aboard a spaceship far from Earth. With the kaiju threat eliminated and the simulation stabilized, they begin adapting to their new reality, holding onto the hope of building a better future together. And this ending managed to leave me completely speechless. Seeing the characters that you learn to like and watch develop finally get the happy ending and even become parents was just incredibly beautiful. So after finishing the game that gave me this positive type of sadness when the credits rolled, would I recommend to play it? My answer is very obviously yes. With a narrative resolving around time travel, artificial intelligence, what makes us human, hope and especially hopelessness, the story just pushed the right buttons for me. On top you get the world with its vanillaware typical hand-drawn art style and the characters that all have more than one side to it, as well as a fantastic soundtrack to further support the atmosphere of the world. But while I throw around with superlatives left and right, keep in mind that the game is quite unusual, and while I like the gameplay parts as stated earlier, I would say the story takes a much bigger role, and said story really takes its time to take off, because there's a lot of introduction and pretty basic dialogue in the first hours. But if you prepare yourself for that mentally and go in with the right mindset, in my opinion, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is a very special game worth experiencing. So if you watched until now, first of all, thank you for that. Please feel free to leave a comment down below to tell me if you liked the video and especially what you think of the game yourself. Also, if you liked what you saw, maybe consider liking and subscribing, and I hope to see you next time.